All right. So we are live. All right. Good morning. It's actually good afternoon, right? Let me check my time. Yes, it's 12:05. Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to the program, Meet the Press with Lovejoy. My name is Lovejoy Mchonguza. Welcome to yet another installment of the program that is brought to you by ZELA, Zimbabwe Environmental Lawyers Association. In this program, it's a series of programs that we're going to be talking about environmental children's rights. And today we have invited experts in these issues. They're going to be sharing with us how these issues are being discussed, what is being discussed from a policy point of view, from an expert point of view. So I'll let them introduce themselves. I'll start with the Honorable Yvonne Msarurwa. Please kindly unmute yourself.
Morning. I'm Honorable Yvonne Msarurwa, Chairperson Environment and Climate.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Msarurwa. I'll kindly ask you to mute the other device that I think is in the same room with you, if there is one. If there is, please kindly mute because there's a lot of feedback. All right, thank you, Honorable. And I'll move to Mr. Mazani. Please kindly introduce yourself, where you're coming from.
Okay, good afternoon, viewers. My name is John Mazani. I am a committee clerk for the Portfolio Committee on Environment, Climate and Tourism from Parliament of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. We are really looking forward to hearing from you and tap into your knowledge. And I'll move on to Josephine.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josephine Shiname, and I'm coming from the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association, ZELA. I'm a legal officer with ZELA.
Thank you, Josephine. You are the ones who are sponsoring this program, and we really, really appreciate you involving us in these discussions. And then last but not least, Lisbeth.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Chadenga Lisbeth. I'm part of the Great Zimbabwe University Environmental Law Group, and I'm pleased to be with you this afternoon. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right. There you have it, viewers. We have got lawmakers, we've got people from Parliament, we've got law experts here. So we'll get into it in a bit. But before we do, let me just take this time once again to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic that is amongst us. And as always, we urge you to always take precautions. And we always want to thank our health officials, our health experts, who are making sure that everything goes on smoothly. We want to appreciate you for the kind of work that you're doing, but it's also our clarion call from 26 Richard that please maintain social distancing, kindly wear your mask, wash your hands, and just ensure that you are in a free ventilated working space. That said, we now want to move on to our show, and I'm starting with Lisbeth. I'll give you each four minutes to put your submissions forward, and then now we can go forward. And then, so Lisbeth, yes. Let's talk about where you're coming from and the topic that you was assigned to you, the situation on the ground regarding environmental child rights in mining communities. Please take us through. What is it like right now?
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think that what is very important to understand when we're talking about what is actually prevailing on the ground, it is a very sad reality to notice that the effects of mining in different groups of the country have had adverse and very, very different effects on the communities in which these mining companies exist. So what ZELA did, and I'm going to be mostly referring to a research that was done and compiled by ZELA, and it is available for anyone who might want to be downloading and giving it a look. So what they did is they went to two different communities. They went to Chimanimani and then they went to Shavane, which places, it doesn't really need to be said, are hosts of some of the biggest mining companies that we have in this country in Zimbabwe. So what they did is they went there and they discussed issues with the youth, they discussed issues with the children who live in those areas, and they compiled the results, and then they made a document out of it. And what is striking is the disconnect that is there between the riches that are really exploited in these areas uh, and the very, very, very miserable lives that these individuals in these areas have to live in, especially when it comes to children, because we can all appreciate that children and the youth, they are the marginalized groups in society, and whenever things are done that adversely affect their well-being, they will be the most affected. And we are talking about areas with female children. We are talking about areas with children who can barely afford to have enough food. And these problems just continue to mount and mount. And uh, I think that it is very, very important to discuss the concept of children's rights within the greater framework of the constitution, within the greater framework of the international conventions to which Zimbabwe is a party. And you'd realize that a lot of the things that we are saying the youth should have, we are not asking for favors really. We're just sort of asking duty bearers to do what they are constitutionally mandated to do, or which we have internationally pledged we would do. So I think that I want to first talk about the situation on the ground with regards to the findings that were made in Chimanimani. You actually realize that diamonds were discovered in that area, especially in Chads around 2006, and proper commercial mining of diamonds in the Eastern Highlands started around 2008, and that is when companies started to come in. And we have heard there is a lot of children's rights that have just been violated left, right, and center, and not enough has been done, and that's why we are here today. Uh, I think the first port of call is to look at the environmental rights that have been violated. Children in rural communities are the ones who are responsible for the rearing of cattle. They are responsible for taking care of the livestock generally. And you find that what mining activities have done in these areas is there have been huge pits that have been dug up, very deep pits, and these pits are usually just filled with water when it rains, and nothing has been done to alleviate the issue, to take care of children who sometimes sadly actually fall into these pits and lose their lives, or livestock which falls into these pits and ultimately lead to kids losing their lives. So there's been land degradation, arable land that people were supposed to be using for farming so that they could get food, that is not available anymore. And the thing to remember mostly is the indivisibility of these human rights that we speak of. You can't really speak of one's violation to the right to health, which is a serious issue, because the research done by Zella actually showed that when they went to Chimanimani, the pollution that has been caused in the area by mining activities has led to now myriad of diseases, including TB, which is caused by the amount of dust that just comes out of the mining activities. There is an issue to say companies like Engine, they used to dump, or they still do dump their waste in water bodies that are used by people. So you'd find that when children bath in this water, when children consume this water for food, they get sick. There's cases of ringworm and skin diseases that now afflict these children. So it's difficult to say, in a world where children's rights to adequate food is hampered, the right to life is threatened, the right to education is threatened, and it's not only threatened because they are not being able to access these other rights. No, it's threatened because when mining activities started in Chimanimani, schools that were a school that was being built was actually demolished because it was on an area that was meant for mining, and people were relocated from the place that they were living and taken to other Transal. And what you do realize now is these are children who have to walk extremely long distances to access education. And the effect of that is most of these children are actually dropping out now. They are dropping out because, wow, it's just not worth it to walk that far. They are enticed by the allure of easy money that you'd get when you get into mining. And this is seen, I think in the report, they were actually saying that some of the kids, so one of the kids actually at some point bought a vehicle and he had a driver who would drive him to and from school the other day. And one of the school children was actually bragging to say, I can pay the salaries of all the teachers in this school. And this is not healthy, this is not conducive for a learning environment. And that does hamper to a great deal the capacity of children to enjoy their right to education. uh, I think another issue, and this is even more striking, is the capacity of children to be protected. Children have the right to protection from their parents, from the community, from companies even, and that has not been happening in Chimanimani. It's almost like a jungle out there because you children are generally and genuinely scared that if female children were to walk around on their own going to school, they will probably end up getting raped. And the sad part of this phenomenon is that the report noted that these rapes are not just perpetuated by artisanal miners who come and disrupt the peace. No, some members of the armed forces, the soldiers, were actually complicit in this issue. And it was actually being said that because these kids feel safe in and around them, and because of the protection that these soldiers offer, the children are not really in a position to say no to these advances when they ask for sexual favors. And that is just really, really sad. Uh, One other issue, and I think this is very, very particularly important, is the issue to say that in terms of Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, every child has a right to be heard. Every child has a right to participate in all the decisions that affect them. That has not been happening. That has literally never happened at any point. And it is of concern to note that this is not just a complaint that the children had. Even certain adult members of the communities and the societies that were interviewed had issues that they were raising with regards to this issue. And I think if we are genuinely saying what we always say, to say kids are the future, kids are the next generation, then we need to start changing our attitudes towards how much we include children. If we're not going to include children, they cannot be the future because they cannot make decisions from a point of not knowing anything. So if you look at the situation that is prevailing right now in Shimanimani, and you look at just how many of these children's rights are being violated every single day by mining companies that are raking out a lot and lot of money and just taking out there. People have been relocated from the places that they live in. Children have a right in terms of our constitution to parental care. They have that right, but that right has actually been hampered now because uh, parents, in one occasion, one other member of the community was saying, our wives went to the mines to sell wares so that we could have food at home and whatnot. But they just didn't stop there. They ended up selling themselves also. And women fired back to say, you know what, these are the guys that went to the mines. And when they found enough diamonds in their mined, they left us for better women. And this war dynamic is not conducive. It just continues to take more and more away from what children should rightfully have. So uh, this becomes one of the greatest challenges, especially if you go into the Chimaniman area. And the other point that I would like to make is to do with the whole education thing. We can talk about how important education is, but we can never really under overestimate, overstate really how vital it is for the future and for the development of the children. These children had to walk long distances to go to school. These children were provided some point transport, but that also the workers of these mining companies, they started sexually harassing these children, and these mining companies just stopped offering transport to these children. As opposed to trying to find alternative transport for the kids, that didn't put them in a difficult position with these predators. They just stopped, and this has now allowed these artisanal miners to violate their right to protection. They harass them, they rape them, and that is not okay. That is not okay.
Okay.
So, in so far as the situation in Chimanimani is concerned, I think there is a lot more rights that are violated, but uh, 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 I just figured I would really zone in on these so that we can have an appreciation and an understanding of how much we need to do to sort of like make things right. Whereas in
All right.
Shishawan, on the other hand, you know,
Okay. Lisbeth, sorry, I'm going to sort of cut you because I can see you're so passionate about this. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. Don't worry about it. We'll come back to you. We just want to give others a chance and to let them also speak on their parts as well. I'll move on to Josie, who is going to give us our second deliberation. Josie, you are a legal officer with Zela, and we want to know the role of laws and policies in promoting and protecting environmental child rights. Please take us through.
Okay, thank you, Lovejoy, and thank you, Lisbeth, for setting the pace and the background of this discussion. So what I want to mention, Lovejoy, firstly is when you look at environmental harm, environmental degradation, like what Lisbeth has been saying about water pollution, dust, and land degradation with regards to gullies, you will realize that in as much as that environmental degradation affect everyone in communities, affect every community member, children are more vulnerable, mainly because firstly, they are still developing, and issues to do with air pollution will affect them more. Their lungs are still developing and they are affected more. And also the effects or the impacts of such environmental harm, when they are affected at such a young age, they will grow to be adults who have those disadvantages because their health might have been impacted when they were still young. So this is why we are focusing on children. This is why we, as Zela, we thought that we should have this project and this initiative on environmental child rights, working with like-minded organizations and some of our funding partners like Teredes Homes, TDH. So that's what I wanted to say before going into the role of the laws. So basically, Lovejoy, if you look at laws, why we have laws to regulate anything, the idea is to ensure that when it comes to environmental child rights, when it comes to a right to environment for children, it will not be a token or their right to a healthy environment will not be protected in a form of, let's say, kindness, but it will be based on obligations and accountability. What am I saying? So when we're looking at the environment and child rights, what we'll be doing, we'll be looking at environmental related laws and policies and practices, and looking at how, to what extent are to what extent are these child sensitive? To what extent can they ensure that whatever that is being done in environmental management, looking at given the context that we're speaking, looking at mining, to what extent are we taking into consideration the needs of children? To what extent are we taking into consideration the views of children? So what the law really is supposed to do when we are looking at environmental child rights, we are basically saying, are the laws that we have, are the laws and the policies that we have in Zimbabwe allow us, do the laws and policies that we have in Zimbabwe allow us to look at environmental management from a child rights-based approach? Yeah. So that's what we'll be looking at. So a child rights-based approach, environmental management, is a system where the laws and the policies furthers the realization of the rights, firstly. Yeah. So secondly, also we look at it uses the standards that are there in the law, looking at international law like the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the African Charter on the Rights of the Child, looking at also other international conventions that relates to environmental rights and children's rights. And we also look at, does the laws assist in building the capacity of children as right holders and duty bearers, and not necessarily as individuals who are supposed to be seen and not to be heard. So that's what we'll be looking at, and that's what we we really want to see the laws really doing. So now looking at the right to a healthy environment, the construction of the legal construction of the right to a healthy environment, we'll be looking at, when we are looking at issues to do with the obligations that prohibits water pollution, that prohibits air pollution, that prohibits land degradation, and that requires environmental impact assessments. We'll be looking at, are these child sensitive enough? When we are setting our standards for the air quality, when we are setting our air quality standards, are we taking into account the difference that exists between adults and children when we are looking at what the air quality is supposed to be like? How can these gases affect these different kinds of people? So that's what Lovejoy will be. That's what is supposed to be looked at. So the role now of the law, it then comes to set the standards that are child sensitive, standards that ensure a child rights based approach as I have laid out previously. So basically, that's the role that the law plays. So currently, when you look at our laws in Zimbabwe, we have the Constitution, which is the apex, the main law that we have in Zimbabwe. And section 73 of the Constitution provides for a right to a healthy environment, a right that everyone is a right to an environment that is not harmful to their well-being. And it goes a step further to provide for a right for future generations looking at the environment and issues to do with sustainable development. So in the mining sector now, we'll be looking at is the conduct of mining companies promoting that right? Is the conduct of government departments promoting that particular right, looking at children? So when a mining company is coming to an area, and an environmental impact assessment is supposed to be done, the law says that consultation should be conducted. Everyone who may be affected by the mining activities has to be consulted. So what I would say when we are saying everyone, are the consultations that are conducted are conducive enough to allow for the participation of children, conducive enough to ensure that their needs and their rights are taken into account. When we're looking at even access to environmental information, our educational curriculum, well, are they including environmental awareness when we are teaching about children? How are we raising the environmental consciousness of our children? So those are some of the things that has to be provided for by the law. And lastly, when we look at, we have said that there are these violations that are occurring. Our access to remedy mechanisms child-friendly? When we are saying you can report to EMA, is EMA accessible to children? Do children even know about EMA and its roles, the environmental management agents, its role? Can children access parliament to to give their complaints and their concerns when it comes to the environment? So basically, Lovejoy, in conclusion, the role of the law when it comes to the role of the law and the policies when it comes to environmental child rights, it has to ensure that, firstly, the right to a healthy environment for children is protected. So when we are setting our standards regarding air quality, regarding water quality, regarding even land degradation, and how we are conducting the mining business, we have to take into consideration the vulnerability of children, the specific needs that children have as compared to adults. And secondly, we have to ensure that when we are disseminating environmental information, our laws should ensure that when disseminating that information, it should be disseminated in a child-friendly manner, and it should be disseminated in a way that children are able to understand and participate. And thirdly, we have to continuously continuously involve children in things that affect them. They have a right to be heard, and that right should continuously be promoted. So that's something that we really we will be talking about. So I
Okay.
think my 4 minutes is up, Lovejoy. We'll continue this discussion as we go along, yeah?
All right, it's fine. You mentioned a lot of things, which I think and I hope that will be addressed by Mr. Mazani and Honorable Msaruro. There are a lot of issues to do with the laws themselves, involvement of children, what is being done on the ground. So without wasting much time, I'll give this time to Mr. Mazani. He's going to be talking to us about the roles and responsibilities of youth bearers in protecting and promoting the right to a healthy environment for children and youth. Mr. Mazani, it's your time.
Thank you so much, Lovejoy. Let me start by thanking Josephine for that presentation. It has touched on a number of issues that are very pertinent. But let me start by telling you that the duty bearers are us, the adults, of course, the state, the parliament, the companies that do the mining, and everyone else that actually utilizes environmental resources. So we are all involved in this call for respecting environmental child's rights. So what is it that duty bearers are supposed to be doing? What are their roles and responsibilities? I will just focus on 5 issues. The first one that has been raised by Josephine has to do with education. So I would say it is the duty of it is the responsibility of duty bearers to ensure that the educational programs they increase children's understanding of environmental issues. And not only that, but they strengthen their capacity to respond to environmental challenges. So in our education system, which I know the chairperson will elaborate on, we have a curriculum from 0 grade right up to tertiary institution at the moment that deals with children's rights. So on that score, yes, we are doing something as a nation. What is quite lacking on our educational program could be the other aspects that Josephine has raised in terms of information dissemination, in terms of the legal aspect as to when children
Okay, sorry,
want.
there's a lot of feedback coming from your side. I don't know if you can fix it. I'm sure you're using another device to listen. Maybe if you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit better because the viewers are complaining about that feedback. But you may continue, say. My apologies for interjecting.
Okay, let me move a little bit away.
Yeah, it's a
How
bit
is it
better for
now?
me.
Right. So I was saying our educational programs, they expand from the 0 grade right up to tertiary institution. So what is lacking on our education is the legal aspect when we need children to find a recourse when the environment is being harmed and they need to raise issues with that. So that is what we have a problem with at the moment, because our educational programs simply tell us about the environment, the benefits of our environmental resources, how we should protect them, but not the other side. Then the second issue that I need to raise is that it is the responsibility of duty bearers to ensure that the effects of proposed measures on children's rights are assessed before measures are taken or approved. You see that Josephine has been raising a very important point that the needs of children are not taken on board. And currently, I'm sure our nation is not doing justice on our children in terms of environmental rights, because as we speak right now, I'm not very sure if we have any law or any policy that allows the children to be taken on board on issues that affect them, or whether they can incorporate the needs of the children effectively to make sure that these people have their voices heard, and also they contribute to environmental resources where necessary, be it in the tourism sector or in the mining sectors. Then the third aspect I need to raise is that the duty bearers have a responsibility to collect information about the sources of environmental harm to children and make the information publicly available and accessible. This is being done by EMA through the document that they call Environmental Outlook. They've actually collected the information, the sources are known. Probably what is the challenge right now is the information being publicly available and accessible. But I'm sure I've seen that document. It details a lot of sources of environmental harm and all the health associated with that. Then the fourth aspect I need to talk about in terms of roles and responsibility of duty bearers is to facilitate the participation of children in environmental decision-making processes. Again, it comes back to the needs of the children. So we are saying the duty bearers should protect children from a lot of challenges that they face when they want to participate or express their views on environmental matters. So this is an area that the government needs also to take on board, and also Parliament through the portfolio committees like the Committee on Environment, the Committee on Mines, and the Committee on Primary and Secondary Education. So these can make sure that they sit together, have a joint meeting to make sure that environmental decision-making processes are taken care of or are facilitated so that the children participate freely. Then on number 5, the issue that I want to raise relates to the removal of barriers that children face to access to justice for environmental harm. You see, Josephine has raised a very important point that the children don't know where to have access to justice for environmental harm. Do they go to EMA, and does EMA have that platform to make sure that they are heard? And Parliament has a petitioning process, and the children would need somebody to represent them through a petition so that it comes to Parliament. But we haven't of late seen such kind of petitions coming through us to tell us of the children's petitions with regards to environmental rights. So basically, as duty bearers, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that the best interests of the children are of primary consideration to us, so that we consult the children, we hear their side of view, they appreciate the importance of our environment, they take part in environmental resources. We also, in conclusion, let me just say Zimbabwe should adopt and probably implement environmental standards that are consistent with the best available science and relevant international health and safety standards to make sure that those companies that are violating our environmental rights comply to those issues. And also to make sure that probably through Parliament, we have to review our policies, the laws and budget on environment protection, to be child-centered and in line with regional and national treaties, just like what Josephine is highlighted. So these are my submissions for now.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mazani. Mr. Mazani is from Parliament of Zimbabwe. He was just giving us the duty, the roles of the duty bearers. And one of the things that he talks about is the consultations that are needed for children to be included in these environmental issues, which is very key. And I would also now move on to Honorable Msauro and hear what. Okay. So this is her topic because I really want to be specific. What are authorities currently doing to protect, promote, and respect environmental child rights? And this is Honorable Msauro from the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Environment, which is a very, very important committee in Parliament because we look around. We've got climate change going on. We've got these mining activities going on, and the impact is just immense, especially on the children. So, Honorable Msauro, the floor is yours. Please take us through. Okay, you might want to unmute your mic. Okay.
Thank you, Lavmo. Thank you, fellow presenters. Let me start by acknowledging that almost half of Zimbabwe's populations are children and the youth. These children and youth are therefore key to Zimbabwe's sustainable development and embodies the principle of the intergenerational equity. Zimbabwe is currently doing a lot to protect, promote, and respect environment rights for the children. The government has done very well on environmental education and awareness. Environmental education helps in sustainable management and protection of natural resources and is included in the Zimbabwe education curricula from preschool to primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. Education is central in shaping core values and has a strong influence on environmental outcomes and also influences institutions on environmental governance. However, there is a need to align the education system with current trends in environmental management and sustainability in such a way that it embraces all environmental issues holistically at all levels. Emphasis should be placed on maintaining a sustainable relationship with the environment. Secondly, EMA has done well in adopting and implementing environmental standards with the best available science and relevant international health and safety standards. This has been through the various environmental regulations that are in place. Thirdly, Zimbabwe has also done well in the collection of information about sources of environmental harm to children, and made information publicly available and accessible through its environmental outlook publications. However, the Zimbabwe government needs to improve in facilitating the participation of children in environmental decision-making processes. There are currently very little participation of children on environmental decision-making. Furthermore, the government is not giving due attention to the removal of barriers that children face to access to justice for environmental harm and the full enjoyment of their human rights. This is mostly evident in almost all mining areas. In Zimbabwe, there is generally a lack of deliberate and particular focus on identifying children's rights and access to environmental resources. Thus, Parliament needs to review and make laws that promote fair access and distribution for all environmental resources in all sectors such as mining, tourism, wildlife, and hunting. It is encouraging to know that environment child rights champions such as Zela are amplifying their voices to their voices on the protection, promotion, and respect children's rights in Zimbabwe. This is important to ensure that Parliament and the executive are kept under check on the observance of environment child rights. Parliament is doing a lot to protect, promote, and respect the child right to a safe and healthy environment. The committee, as representatives of the people, including children, to continue, and we are trying to engage them as key stakeholders in finding solutions to the environmental challenges that they face in their communities. The committee uses platforms like this one. We also use petitions. We also do fact findings. We are going to have a fact finding mission very soon in Victoria Falls, and we also do inquiries and so on. The committee also inquire into development of a national environment, and we're actually working on an action plan in Zimbabwe. We should speak a lot on and about the youth involvement, among other things. NEP to be submitted to committee activity is proposed to start on the second quarter of 2021. The national budget and the budget process is critical too. This is what is currently happening in Parliament. And this too is used by Parliament to ensure that appropriate and adequate budgets are allocated to deserving national priorities like protecting and respecting and advancing children's rights to a safe and a healthy environment. And we are trying to fully implement it through the executive. To that effect, we conducted wide consultations from the stakeholders to include children and presented it to the Minister of Finance and Economic Development at the budget seminar, who analyzed the budget being presented today in the post-budget analysis, and will try by all means necessary to recommend to the minister that the child environmental right must be included in it. We are scheduled to debate this post-budget this afternoon. So with these few submissions, I thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Msaru. I will be really watching that post-budget debate later on today. And we are looking forward to finding out what exactly is the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtuli Mue, brought to us with regards to these issues. I'll quickly go to our Facebook community. We have got viewers who are tuned in. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your feedback. There are a lot of submissions. I'll just pick and choose one or two questions for our panelists. There's one question that came through, okay, from Amayaru, and she says, I was just about to ask, what strategies are there in the educational sector for children to successfully, not theoretically, access and implement these policies? I think this question is best fitted for Mr. Mazani, because he was the one who was talking about education and how it can fit. Maybe say you can take us through on that.
Thank you, Lovejoy. Yeah, the process is, like I said, that strategy is lacking. We don't have the strategies at the moment to ensure that the children access the rights, as it were. But they are just being conscientized of the importance of the environment. They are just being told we need to protect it, the importance it has, the relationship it has with the humans, and the wealth that we acquire from that. But then when they want now to get justice for the environmental harm, that aspect is missing. So we don't have a strategy in the educational sector at the moment. You only get to talk about it a little bit at tertiary level, where you find that there is environmental justice course where people talk of environmental justice, but that is that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Another question that has come through is from Varaizo Shisha, And she says, I strongly agree with you, as we cannot talk about child environment without them being at the forefront of the initiatives. Yes, we involve the senior, but they should be there to help in pathfinding and assistance to the children. Okay, I've lost that. To the children and youth, as they are the ones who know factors and issues that directly affect them. Okay, that's not really a question, but it's a contribution. There's an issue. How can children get? How can the children get involved? The tools which can be used for them to get involved. I think it's also a question that can be thrown to any one of you, whoever wants to pick it.
Hi,
Yes,
Lovejoy.
yes, Josie.
Okay, I think what can be done firstly is to maybe also take advantage of the platforms that are already in existence. For instance, I have mentioned that for mining to be conducted in Zimbabwe, the law states that those who will be affected have to be consulted. We have that in the Environmental Management Act. We have that in the accompanying regulations that deal with environmental impact assessment. So I think what needs to be done now is the consultancies who does or who do the environmental impact assessment now have to not just publicize the EIA consultations maybe in newspapers alone, but also has to, when doing consultations, they have to even go to schools, talk to the children, because the school is a safe environment where you can have access to children and talk to them. And teachers are also there to assist on how to, to make children represent their ideas easier and much more interestingly. And also EMA itself, Environmental Management Agency, and civil society organizations like Zela, Environmental Africa, have environmental clubs in schools. So taking advantage of such initiatives will really ensure the participation of children. And also to the honorables, when we are doing law review processes in Zimbabwe, they are enjoined in terms of the constitution to consult on particular laws. So instead of going to just community halls to consult with the public, maybe also if they can use the school system or even the traditional leaders system, where children are gathered by the traditional leader and they are given an opportunity to air their views, it might actually help in
Jessie is having problems with her network there. But one of the questions that has also come through as we wait for Joss to come back, to what extent are children in the rural areas as well as children with disabilities involved in decision-making processes on issues affecting them? I think this is a question that can go to either Honorable Msalurwa or to Lisbeth, because Lisbeth, you're talking about the situation on the ground, and Honorable Msalurwa, you're talking about getting children involved. So I will throw this question to the both of you. I'll start with you, Lisbeth. Okay, you might need to unmute. Okay.
I think that the question that you raise is a very, very interesting one, because whereas people love to really talk about it, when you actually go on the ground, you realize that kids are not part, they are not at all part of the current decision making process. So, especially the kids that are in the rural areas, I think this is very, very interesting. If you notice the level of development that has now sort of like happened in Zishagane and the level of the development that we have in Chimanimani, it's so different. And if you look at the levels of involvement, of course, we're saying we know that the children are not particularly involved, but if you look at who actually has any sort of voice, the children in Shawane are probably a bit more outward and saying certain things about all of these issues that are affecting them, as opposed to the kids that are in Chimanimani. So I think this, and it's very important to remember that when we are talking about kids in the rural areas, we are not just confined to these two areas. There are a lot of other areas where mining activities are happening. And just because we didn't really go and talk to those kids there doesn't necessarily mean that they're not having the same or even more problems than the ones that the children that we interviewed had. So kids in the rural areas and their involvement, kids with disabilities and their involvement, the conversation really, it doesn't even begin to appreciate that in as much as they are all kids, kids with disabilities probably need another space to voice their concerns, which is separate from, these are the kids who are not differently abled. So I think this is a very, very, very important issue. What can we do? And I'm really sorry that I'm here and I don't really have the answers. But I'm hoping that someone does, to say what can we do to involve more these children in the rural areas, and especially children who are differently abled. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Lisbeth. Honorable Msarura, maybe you might want to respond, or maybe there's a follow-up to that, and I think it's directed to Mr. Mazani. There's a question that has just come through, and it says, how come issues involving children and youth, for example, the constitution in context, takes time to be applied by the duty bearers, and factors affecting them are taken lightly, despite the fact that there are initiatives being put in place to address these issues? I think it's for you, Mr. Mazan. I'll come to you, Honorable Msarura, just now.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question from the viewer. My contribution is usually it takes somebody to trigger an action. What we have done right now at this platform, I know a lot of people are following. They have to make sure that they initiate these issues because sometimes things are just sidelined because there is no one who is making noise about them. But now that we have Honorable Msarura here, who is the chairperson of the portfolio committee, and she has also made the commitment that during this budget, starting today, they will scrutinize it and ensure that environmental issues are then taken on board. So this is the first step. So we need to initiate. There are no people who are actually coming on board to initiate. And thank you, Lovejoy. Thank you, Josephine, for organizing this, because I hope it will be a series of onward discussions to make sure that we amplify the voices of the children.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mazani. We'll also come back to you again, because there are a lot of questions that are coming through, and I think some of them we just have to forego because of our time. But we really appreciate the viewers and the comments that they are giving to us. Honorable Msarura, back to you regarding the issue of children in the rural areas.
Okay, thank you, Lavmo. Like I said before,
Lovejoy.
is necessary to assist these children. I think Josephine made a point when she mentioned something about the community-based awareness campaigns, the traditional way, because mostly in rural areas, there is a lack of social media, whereby in Harare, in capital cities, you find people, young children using laptops, and in rural areas, it's very easy to find one or two children given a small cell phone. So what I propose, and what I want us to do, is that we consult also with the communities, as well as we try to work with the traditional system to assist the children in rural areas. The issue of children with disability, this is a very, very big constituency that is always left out. And I'm going to try as well to come up with a formula on how to assist these children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Honorable, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. We don't take that lightly, and once again, we want to thank Zella for this engagement that we are currently having. They are the sponsors of this program, and it's very interactive. One more question that has come, I think it's for you, Josie, and it says, okay, I've lost that one. You know, the questions are just coming through, and I might end up losing them. Okay, how I noted that there is a serious violation of the children's rights to education in some mining areas, particularly in Marange, where some schools were demolished, and as a result, children are now being forced to travel long distances to and from schools. So what is the way forward to address that issue, or what was done to address that issue? Maybe you can tell us from a Stella point of view.
Thank you, Lovejoy, for that question. The issue that happened in Chimanimani regarding the in Marange rather, Chiadzwa, regarding the demolition of the school, it's really sad because now when it is raining, some children do not even attend school because they cannot cross over. There is a river that they are supposed to pass through, going to the nearest high school, which is in Hot Springs, called Hot Springs Secondary School. So I think what we have done, this situation has been obtaining mainly because there is a village that was supposed to be relocated, but now to Ada Transal, but up until now that hasn't happened. So they have no school because their school was demolished, and the mining companies built another school in Ada Transal. So according to them, they have really compensated for the destruction of that school. So what we are trying to do now, or what we have been trying, is to engage with ZCDC to see if learner transport can be provided to assist those children, and also to see if relocation is still going to be done for the remaining village in Marangi. It has to be done, due process has to be followed. It has to be done in a manner that take into consideration community rights, that take into consideration even the needs of the children that are still there. So this is an ongoing campaign, an ongoing initiative that we are continuously trying to do. And yeah, basically from the seller perspective, that has been done. That is what we have been doing. But I really want to emphasize that this situation is obtaining on the ground because of our lack to really take into account the needs of children when when making decisions, especially in the mining sector. Had it been considered that by demolishing the school and not relocating all the villages when they were supposed to be relocated, had that been taken into consideration in the planning process, we would not be here today. But because duty bearers failed to take into consideration the issue of the right to education for children, we are where we are today now. So I hope this session will ensure that we do things better and really safeguard the needs of our children when we are making decisions in the mining sector and with regards to the environment.
All right. There's a contribution from Jefferson Madungwe, and he says companies engaged to start up mining or any other environmental harmful potential need to. Okay, environmental harmful potential need to fund EMA or other independent enforcement agents to do outreach to these local schools, to villages, or on the holistic awareness of the hazards and precautions before they start digging around and harassing locals. Honorable Msaruro, I think, oh, she's gone. Oh, no, that's fine. Maybe Mr. Mazani, you can help us there. Are there any laws that compel companies that are taking up mining activities in these areas to at least ensure that when they leave, they do not leave a trail of destruction? Okay, you might want to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Jefferson, for that question. Currently, we have a lot of decommissioned mines. We have a lot of companies that have done mining, and then after the mineral has been exhausted, they leave and go. And EMA has gotten a very challenging task of reclaiming those mining shafts, those dumping areas that they would have done, because they don't reclaim. It has been a challenge, if I may say, Lovejoy, that EMA does not have the capacity to do that. The EMA is trying to have the buy-in from the government to say, can we be funded so that we decommission some of these mining areas that were left, by other mining companies that went around. So it comes back to the point that the environmental impact assessment, the EIAs that are in place do not actually fund the EMA adequately to ensure that they have money to do that. So at the moment, we don't have directly an act of parliament that compels these companies to fund for that kind of hazards that are created by their activities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that response. Yes, Libet.
Sorry, Lovejoy, if I could. Okay, I think one of the issues that was actually realized on the ground had to do with this particular issue. Local authorities in that area, they were actually complaining, especially in Chimanimani, to say that these mining companies that come in and do mining activities, they do not pay anything to the local authority. And this in turn means that the local authority is not equipped to offer any sort of meaningful service delivery. And that really hampers, the capacity for children to enjoy all of these rights that we're talking about. And they're actually saying that at some point the conversation was had with the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and he was saying, you know what, these guys have to pay certain levies to the local council. But that is not actually translated to any act of parliament to give that full legal effect. And so that is actually one of the biggest problems, really.
Yeah, if I may add there,
Okay.
Lovejoy.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was saying, as duty bearers, it is our duty to make sure that corporate social responsibility, is effected in our policies, in our legislation, to make sure that the children really appreciate the value of the environment. They need to benefit from the environmental resources that are surrounding them so that they can protect them. But if we just talk of social corporate responsibility, that is kind of voluntary, it won't help us. We need the policies to reflect that. We need even statutory instruments to reflect that and compel these people to do something so that the children get value out of that. Thank you.
Interesting. Another contribution that has come through, again, I've lost it. Oh, God. Okay. I think this is from Tafara Leeward. I hope I got that. And he says, I think there is need for a revision when it comes to children's rights, because children have shallow access to air out their voices on environmental rights. I think there is need for a child representative who clearly understands the children. And then I think there's another one which is almost similar, which I saw here. I strongly believe that, okay, no, not this one. I strongly agree with you, as we cannot talk about child environment without them being at the forefront of the initiatives. Yes, we involve the seniors, but they should be there to help in pathfinding and assistance or assisting the children and youth, as they are the ones who know factors and issues that directly affect them. Let's talk about this briefly. Youth involvement, children and youth involvement. It looks like all the environmental organizations are led by the seniors, and there's little or no involvement of children in these organizations. What is really going on? Why do we have such issues? Why can't we involve children in their issues? Maybe Josephine, you can help us there.
Okay. Thanks, Lovejoy. I think from the discussions that we have had as Zela, and from the work that we have been doing, we have realized that the issue of child participation in environmental matters, children and youth participation in environmental matters, mainly over the years, it has been affected by some of our what do you call it, traditional and cultural beliefs that children are mainly seen and should not be heard. So it's very difficult to really give a platform for children to speak about the issues that affect them. But I would like to say that if you look at how the climate change discourse is going and how um, many youths and children are now involved in issues to do with climate change in Zimbabwe and also in the world generally, you can see that there is a shift that is particularly happening. And this can be attributed maybe to the increase in environmental awareness among children and youths. As I've mentioned, Emma, Zela, and other organizations working on the environment have really embarked on on awareness raising among school children, among children in tertiary institutions on the need to safeguard the environment. And climate shocks like Cyclone Idai and other, floods that happened recently in Zimbabwe have also worked to really raise environmental consciousness among youths, among children, among citizens as a whole. So this also have really helped in the involvement of children in these issues. But really more has to be done, especially when we are looking at issues to do with policy making, when we are looking at issues to do with environmental impact assessment, which is a very important tool in environmental management. So their involvement in such issues is still lacking. And also when you look at how even our national climate change policy really makes reference to the need to put in place child sensitive adaptation and mitigation measures. It really shows the increasing awareness that we have to involve children and youths in these issues because they are the most affected, and given that they still have longer to go and they can be affected with the issues even in their adult life, it really shows that there is a shift that is happening in Zimbabwe, in the world, and everywhere. Even if you look at how Greta has been fighting for climate change. So now I just want to say to Mr. Mazani and other duty bearers we are listening now, that do not be left with the tide. Involve children, involve youths in this. They have interesting ideas on what can be done to safeguard our environment, to improve on how we are doing things, how we are working. And I'm happy that there was a motion in Parliament recently on the need to have a parliamentary caucus on children's rights because they are important and they have to be really considered. So there is a shift that is happening and we should take advantage of that and continue working and continue raising awareness among children and youths on these issues, because for them to participate, they have to be aware of such issues. Thank you, Lovejoy.
All right.
Maybe
Okay.
if you still have a minute.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to add that the issues of the environment are quite technical, not mentioning the legal component that is involved in environmental issues. So my contribution is probably we need to develop simplified teaching instruments that actually simplify the technical aspects to the level of the children. If they are in primary school, we have a package that can actually make the children understand these very important issues of the environment, with the simplicity that they need. Then the legal aspect also has to be simplified. We have to disseminate that information after it has been, simplified to the level of the children. If it is in secondary schools, let us have that kind of maybe flyers. Let us have something like booklets that are simplified for them to understand the legal background, the legal implications of all that we are talking. Because right now, as we are speaking, some people don't contribute because they don't really appreciate the whole picture in terms of the environment. Yet it is the most important thing that we can ever talk about here on earth. So why we are leaving them out, why we feel like they are being left out or they are not contributing, it's because they don't have the necessary information that is brought to them to their level so that they can make meaningful contribution to the discourse.
Interesting. Your point here is supported by Linz Patrick's. I think I got that right. And he or she says the children themselves need to be enlightened on their rights and need to fight for their rights. They need to lead these environmental programs and the benefits of the programs. Also, Zela has a role to play in ensuring these rights are implemented. I think Zela pachiona tinoti chitsvambe chamapiwa icho. It's something that you have to work on. Because of time, I think we might have to give our parting shots, and we've lost two of our colleagues. We've lost Honorable Msarura. I would want to assume that it's network, or maybe she's rushing to the budget. And then we've also lost Lisbeth. Oh, he's back. He's back. So I'll just give you each 2 minutes to just give your parting shots. As we also wrap up this program, and then Josephine, I would also want to talk about. I would also want you to talk about the petition that you guys have that is ongoing as you wrap up. So we can start with Mr. Mazani.
Oh, thank you so much for this platform. My parting shot is let's keep this discussion going. If there is need, let's just make sure that the forum grows bigger and bigger, so that the voice is amplified, so that the children will find champions who will represent them, and also they join the debate, so that we have their contribution, and the decision makers will then take on board their contributions. Thank you.
All right, Lisbeth, on the ground.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that the one thing that I really want to say before we wrap this up is we need to be really alarmed at the difference that is existing in terms of how children's rights are being violated in Chimani and how children's rights are being perceived in Shavane. And we are talking about mining activities that are done in the same country, realizing almost the same amount of money. And one area is immensely benefited from the right to education, from the right to health, from the right to infrastructure development, from even improved security. And another is just gone in a downward spiral. So you're saying these things that are obtaining on the ground, these should be
Are you still
signs,
there?
these should be things that worry every single one of us. And these are things that we should
I
be
think we have
determined
lost
not allowed to
Lisbeth there.
continue.
I can see Honorable Msarura in the background. She's back just in time. Josephine, maybe you can also take us through.
Okay, thank you, Lovejoy. I just want to say that to take this opportunity to talk about the Environmental Child Rights Campaign that Zela and other organizations have embarked on. So this is an international campaign, and on this campaign we are being led by one of our partners, Teredes Homes. So we are advocating for an optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Children, specific on the right to a healthy environment, because we have noticed that when it comes to children's rights, it has really helped to have international standards that guide national laws, that guide regional laws on what needs to be done in order to protect the rights of children. So we are advocating for same to be done when it comes to the right to environment. And at the national level, we are trying to have the government of Zimbabwe to really implement the environmental laws that we have, the Constitution, the Environmental Management Act, and the accompanying regulations. So to that effect, there is a petition, an online petition that we are signing. So visit myplanet.myrights.org and sign the petition. You get more information about the petition on that particular website. And in this petition, I'd like to mention that we have so many young people who are leading initiatives. So if you do not follow Zella on Twitter, on Facebook, kindly follow our social media platforms, and also follow TDH Southern Africa. You get updates on that platform, on those platforms, about the petition and other initiatives that we are doing to promote the right to a healthy environment. And yeah, that's what I want to say. And youths are really taking initiative on this one. So do not be left out. Join the bandwagon and let's fight for a better future and a better planet, because we only have one planet. We need to take care of it. Thank you, Lovejoy.
All right. Thank you so much. I had seen Honorable Msaruro, but she's again left. Well, I think it's because of the network. But I would really love to thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking time off your schedules to come and talk about this very important issue. Judging by the responses that we are receiving, it shows that this is an issue that is so dear to everybody's hearts, because like Josephine concluded, this is our world, this is our planet. We only have but one planet, and we need to do a collective effort to ensuring that we save it and we leave it in a better place for the next generation. I would like to thank Zella for sponsoring this program. Thank you so much. We have an ongoing conversation. This was the second, I think, 3 or 4 episodes that we're going to be talking on these environmental child rights. So look forward to those future programs that will be coming through on this platform. And I would also like to thank the viewers themselves for tuning in and for the contributions. And yes, we're having challenges with the network here and there with the sound, but you were glued to the screen. We really appreciate you. And I would like to thank Mr. Mazani as well, and Honorable Yvonne Msaruro in absentia, for taking time from your parliamentary duties. We know today there's a budget that is going to be presented, but you saw it fit to come through. Thank you so much. The program was Meet the Press with Lovejoy. My name is Lovejoy Mchongiza. Join me and the crew in other programs that are going to be following. And for now, it's bye.